Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you so much for attending today's session, which is Intro to Performance Management. My name is Janelle and I'm a senior HR consultant here with Implementation Specialist. I have had the privilege of supporting organizations across a wide range of industries over the last 17 years, helping the businesses to really build more effective people-focused strategies. And performance management is one of the most crucial elements that we address. So what are we diving into today? We'll walk through what performance management actually is, because it's not just that one-time review or a form that you're going to complete once a year. We'll look at why it's critical to the health of your organization, the components that make it effective, and then how you implement it consistently and meaningfully, even if you are a smaller business. Why is it so important is because managing performance isn't just about being punitive. It's about having clarity, alignment, accountability, and whether you have 5 employees or you have 500 employees, having that structured yet flexible approach to performance management is how you're going to move that needle in your business and create a culture where people understand what's expected, how they're doing, and how they are able to grow. So first off, what is performance management? We'll start by defining what it really is. At its core, performance management is a strategic and continuous process that focuses on aligning individual and team performance with the overall goals of the organization. So it's not just about evaluating past work, it's also going to be proactively guiding employees through what the future success looks like. So that means setting them up with clear expectations, providing timely, meaningful feedback, developing them through coaching, through training, and regularly assessing their progress. So the process should not begin and end with an annual performance review. In fact, companies that rely solely on a once-a-year conversation are often left scrambling to address issues that could have been corrected months earlier. So modern performance management is going to be, dynamic and continuous, built into your daily and weekly rhythm. It's going to be more of a conversation and just not a checklist of something that needs to get done. So why does it matter? Because at the heart of every business, no matter what your product is, what your service or industry, it's going to be your people. When your people are clear on what success looks like, supported in their development and held accountable in a fair and consistent way, your business is going to even be more successful. So strong performance management systems are going to do 3 critical things. They're going to align the employee activity with company goals, ensuring that everyone is going to be rowing in the same direction rather than working on opposites of each other. And they boost productivity and morale by creating a sense of purpose, having that progress. They're going to reduce turnover by engaging your team and showing them that their work matters. When done well, performance management transforms from really what could be considered a compliance activity into that culture driver. It's going to create trust, open some of the dialogue, and then it also helps your top performers shine while giving some of those underperformance that you may have a roadmap to continue to improve. Effective performance management is going to be built on a few key pillars, and it's important that all of them are in place for the system to work as intended. There's going to be a goal setting, which is going to be those clear aligned goals, giving the employees the direction and purpose. Continuous feedback. Performance should never be a surprise. Real-time actionable feedback helps employees stay on track and feel as though they are being supported. Coaching and development. Employees need more than direction. They need development. Investing in your team's growth is going to increase that loyalty and capability. And then formal evaluations. These are going to provide that structure, the snapshot in time for reflection, but then they should support and not replace that ongoing dialogue. And then recognition and accountability. So acknowledging those wins, but then also addressing issues directly and constructively. The balance builds a high performance culture. And when the components are integrated intentionally, then you're going to build a cycle of performance that supports individual growth and is going to drive that business result that you're looking for. One common oversight that there is in performance discussions is the failure to distinguish between performance and potential. Performance is going to be what someone is currently doing, their results, their behaviors, their input. But on the flip side, potential is about what they're capable of, their capacity to grow, to lead, and then to take on more in the future. A strong performance management system is going to account for both. And we need to recognize when someone is performing consistently and delivering results, but we also want to identify those high potential individuals who may be ready to step into new roles or responsibilities. Managing for performance alone can lead to some stagnation. So managing for potential without performance can cause frustration and imbalance. And the real magic is really going to happen when we support and develop both sides. One of the most foundational and overlooked elements of performance management is the setting of the clear expectations. Before you can manage performance, people need to understand really what is expected of them. That starts with a well-defined job description. Isn't just a formality. It's going to be the anchor for accountability. And when roles are unclear, you're going to create a space for confusion. There could be duplication of work or even missed responsibilities. And from there, we need to define really what does that success look like. So that means identifying clear, measurable success metrics, whether it's customer satisfaction scores, project completion timelines, some quality benchmarks, or even some team collaboration standards. The expectations must be aligned with your broader team and organization goals. So employees should be able to connect their day-to-day responsibilities with the bigger picture. So that alignment is really what's going to give that work some meaning and impact. And when expectations are vague, if they're inconsistent or even misaligned, performance issues are going to be inevitable, not because the people don't want to perform, but more so because they don't know how to meet the standard of what your expectations are. When it comes to setting performance goals, I always recommend using the SMART framework. So specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So walking through each of them, the S versus specific is going to be goals focused and clearly defined what needs to be accomplished and avoiding vague language. Measurable is the way to track progress, defining how success will be measured. Achievable is those goals should stretch the employee but still be within reach based on their role and resources. Relevant is each goal should tie back to business objectives and team priorities. And then time bound is there should always be a defined time frame for completion to create urgency and accountability. And the SMART goals are really going to eliminate some of that uncertainty. This is going to help the employees understand not just what they need to do, but why and how and by when. And from a leadership perspective, they're going to give you a clear baseline for evaluating performance. Are we moving that needle? Are we aligned? And at the end of the day, are we progressing? So looking at the role of a manager, talking about the critical role that managers are going to play in performance management. This cannot be overstated. Your managers are the linchpin of your performance culture. Again, I will say that one more time, that your managers are the linchpin of your performance culture. The manager is not just an evaluator or a task assigner. They're a coach, they are a developer, and they are that strategic partner in the employee's growth. So that means three things. They're going to guide, providing that clarity on expectations, helping team members navigate challenges. They're going to support, removing any roadblocks, advocating for resources, and really just checking in on well-being. And then they're going to give feedback, and not just infrequent feedback. They're going to give regular feedback, not just when things go wrong, but when things are going right too. When managers lean into coaching rather than the policing, they're going to foster that trust in their team. They encourage problem solving, and then they're going to build teams that can think critically. They can collaborate more effectively, and they can take initiative. Investing in managers' ability to lead performance conversations is one of the smartest things that you can do as an organization. So ongoing feedback versus annual feedback reviews. This is where many organizations start to shift in their mindset. Performance management, again, we'll say, is not going to be that once a year event. It's a conversation, should be ongoing. That ongoing feedback is going to build trust. When employees hear from their managers regularly, they know where they stand. There's not going to be surprises. Surprises are not good. We should never have surprises. It allows for real-time course correction. So if someone's off track, you can address it immediately rather than letting it become the pattern. And then it's going to create momentum. So recognition and feedback are going to fuel motivation of your employees. That doesn't mean that annual reviews should necessarily go away. They just need to become summaries of everything you've already discussed throughout the year. So if you're only having one big conversation in December or whatever your review period is, you're missing 11 months of opportunity. So instead of building in, build in those check-ins, whether it's weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, to keep that dialogue open and proactive with employees. One-on-one meetings are one of the most impactful tools that can be in a leader's toolkit. So the meetings should be consistent, focused, and two-way. So consistent, making sure that it's weekly or bi-weekly. Honestly, even like a 15-minute could make a difference. Not making it a status update meeting. This is the time to really connect on goals, connect on challenges, development, and also a big one is connecting on those wins. And it's two-way. Don't just have it be you checking in on them. It's about creating that space for the employee to raise concerns, ask questions, and also share insights. I always use the time to ask, what's going well for you right now? Another one is, what's getting in your way? What support do you need from me? Is there anything, a big question I always kind of end it with is there anything you want to develop or learn? One-on-ones are where trust is going to be built. They're going to signal to your team that they're seen, that they're valued, and that they have your support. And when you keep these consistent, they become the heartbeat of your performance culture. Coaching is going to be a critical element of performance management, but too often it's misunderstood. Coaching isn't just about fixing what goes wrong. It's going to be about fostering and growth and development in each and every one of your employees, focusing on those strengths, but also touching on some of those areas for improvement. People are going to be more successful when they understand what they're good at and how they can build upon those strengths. And by identifying areas where employees can grow, they're going to give them that path forward and help them to unlock their full potential. As a coach, asking, again, some of those open-ended questions is going to help your employees to really reflect on their own development. What challenges are they facing? What skills would they like to develop? And how do they see their career progressing? This kind of conversation is going to create some ownership of them and their growth. You're not telling them what to do. You're going to guide them to discover solutions and identify the opportunities. As a leader, your role is going to be to provide the tools, the training, and the encouragement that they need to be successful overall. Performance issues, of course, they're going to arise. That's all part of managing a team. The key is addressing these issues early before they snowball into much bigger problems. Avoiding the temptation to delay the hard conversations. The longer we wait, the harder it is going to be to resolve it. When you spot a performance issue, have that direct, constructive conversation early on. And be specific, be kind, and be honest about the behavior and the outcome that you've observed, and then focus on how and why it's an issue. This is going to ensure that your feedback is actionable. Also remember that documentation is crucial. This isn't about creating a punitive environment. Again, it's clarity. It's setting those expectations of what there is for improvement. Document the conversation and steps taken is going to protect both you and the employee in case issues were to escalate. Performance management, again, make sure that it's ongoing, that it's a supportive process and not something that's reactive. Let's talk a little bit about documentation and why it matters. So tracking both positive performance and areas for improvement is essential for consistency. Keeping records of conversations, feedback, and progress creates transparency. This helps ensure that employees and really everyone is on the same page. It's going to reduce some of that bias and provides clarity for future conversations. Use consistent forms or notes to track. So for those accomplishments, making sure that you're recognizing, noting what those key achievements are. This can be really useful for reviews and to just show appreciation for those employees' contributions. And then issues, when challenges or underperformance arises, then document what was discussed, what actions were taken, and then what the timelines are going to be for follow-up. Having these records isn't just for performance reviews or feedback. This is going to be your legal safeguard. If performance issues escalate to the point of disciplinary action or even termination, you need to have a clear documented history of steps taken. Ultimately, documentation is about consistency, it's about transparency, and protecting every single person that is involved in the process. Common performance challenges. Performance management sounds great in theory, but in practice, many organizations face some common challenges that can really hinder that success. So some of the challenges are lack of clarity, inconsistent follow-up, avoiding feedback, and then not having that alignment with goals. So when expectations are unclear, employees don't know what's expected or how they'll be evaluated. The key here is setting clear, measurable goals right from the start. We all know managers are often busy. Performance management can at times slip through the cracks. And to prevent this, we want to make performance management part of your regular routine. So whether that's through scheduled check-ins, feedback sessions, regular review cycles, again, making that part of your regular routine. Many managers do avoid giving difficult feedback because they don't want to upset the employees. But at the end of the day, feedback, especially when it's constructive, is necessary for growth. The solution is really making that feedback a regular part of your interactions and using frameworks similar to the SBI model, which we can talk about in a little bit here shortly, to keep it constructive. No alignment with goals is sometimes employees are working hard, but not on the right things. Ensuring that individual goals are consistently aligned with team and company objectives. This is going to help everybody stay focused on what truly is going to drive those business results. So diving a little bit into how to deliver feedback effectively, one of the most powerful tools in performance management is going to be feedback, with a caveat of it must be done well. A few tips for giving feedback that is both constructive and impactful is making sure that it's timely, specific, using the SBI model, and then asking for their perspective. So feedback is going to be most useful when it's given soon after the behavior or outcome occurs. Waiting weeks or even months is going to dilute its impact. So by giving immediate feedback, you can correct course before issues escalate. General feedback like you did a good job or that didn't meet expectations really isn't helpful. You need to get specific about what was done well, what could have been improved. For example, something to, you've handled the customer complaint very professionally, but the response time could have been quicker, is much better than just a simple good job or didn't meet. Using that SBI model, this is a fantastic way to frame feedback constructively. So SBI is going to be your situation, your behavior, and your impact. So it's describing the specific situation, focusing on the behavior that you observed. Do not focus on the person, focus on the behavior. And then impact, explain the impact of that behavior, whether it's positive or negative. And then lastly, feedback should always be a two-way conversation. Ask the employee for their thoughts on the situation and allow them time to self-reflect on how things are going. This not only makes that feedback more collaborative, but also gives insight into any potential blind spots that there may be. Effective feedback is going to be specific, timely, and actionable. It's not going to be about criticizing. It's really, at the end of the day, it's about helping those employees grow. Formal performance reviews are typically happen annually or biannually. And while we emphasize the importance of ongoing feedback, formal reviews are still going to play a role in bringing everything together. It's going to be the summary of the progress, the goals, performance trends, and to make a more meaningful, I would say, incorporate some self-assessments. This is going to give the employees a voice in the process and encourage self-reflection. Often employees are aware of both their wins and their challenges, and self-awareness is a huge first step for growth. And combining that with the manager's evaluation, which is going to bring some of the objectivity, feedback, guidance all into that mix, and then using quantitative and qualitative components. So ratings for consistency, narrative feedback to highlight the context, the effort, the impact. It's also important to review and update goals during these sessions, reinforcing what's next for the employee. Performance reviews, there should never be one thing in a performance review that is a surprise. If there are any surprises, that's a sign that the feedback loop throughout the year has not been strong enough. One of the biggest concerns with performance reviews is fairness, and that's where calibration comes in. Calibration is going to be that process of reviewing performance ratings across teams to ensure that they're being applied consistently. And without it, you're going to risk some favoritism and maybe some recency bias. So certain employees may feel, certain employees are rated higher based on their relationships rather than the results. And then the recency bias is where maybe some of the recent performance, good or bad, outweighs the full year's contributions. And to prevent this, it would be recommended that organizations encourage those managers to gather input from multiple sources, so not just their own observations, whether it's peer feedback, project outcomes, client feedback, any of that can offer some very valuable insights. Providing managers are providing training for their managers on how to evaluate performance using clear criteria and objective measures. And finally, holding those calibration meetings where leadership teams come together to compare evaluations and ensure that there's overall alignment. When employees see that the process is fair, that the process is transparent, they're going to be the ones that are more likely to trust it and engage with it. Recognition and motivation. A strong performance management system isn't just about correcting what's wrong. It's enforcing also what's right, what's going good. That is where that recognition comes in. Employees want to know when they're, that each of their efforts matter. So recognition, that's going to increase their motivation, really reinforce those positive behaviors, and it's going to contribute significantly to the employee retention. Recognition does not have to be big. It doesn't have to be expensive. At the end of the day, it just needs to be meaningful. You can recognize people publicly, such as during team meetings, company emails, or really even privately, giving them that handwritten note, one-on-one shout out. It's always good to know what each employee on your team is comfortable with, whether they want it more publicly or whether they are more of a private person and they don't necessarily want to have that shout out publicly. Linking recognition to company values or goals is going to make it even more impactful. So an example I can think of is maybe just saying, I appreciate how you handled the project. The communication really reflected our core value of transparency. And then don't forget peer-to-peer recognition. When teams start noticing and acknowledging each other's efforts, it's going to build that culture of appreciation. Managing performance doesn't have to mean complex systems or expensive software, especially for some small businesses that maybe they're not there yet to have larger software. There are so many tools available to support performance management. It could be as simple as starting with a spreadsheet or shared documents that are going to track those goals, the feedback, and the reviews. There's also, of course, HR software platforms and performance management apps that offer templates, that offer goal tracking, feedback tools, workflows. And at the end of the day, whatever tool you choose, make sure it's user-friendly and ensure that it fits the scale of your organization. The key here is going to be consistency. It's not about having the flashiest, most fancy tool. It's going to be making sure having a tool that your team is truly going to use. Pick a system that supports clear communication, goal tracking, record keeping. Even if the system is basic, if it's used consistently across teams and departments, it's still going to be highly effective. And finally, an often overlooked but absolutely essential part of performance management is going to be legal considerations. When performance management isn't handled properly, it can expose a business to risk, especially when it comes time to terminations or disputes. Some best practices to stay compliant and protect both your organization and the employees is documenting clearly and objectively, avoiding those vague statements. Instead of saying poor attitude, describe those specific behaviors. Avoid discriminatory language. So never include language that could imply bias based on race, age, gender, disability, or even any other protective characteristics. Focus strictly on performance, behavior, and that business impact. Treat all employees under the same policies and procedures. Ensure that there's fairness and consistency. If one person receives more leniency and stricter evaluation than another for the same issue, that inconsistency could be a huge liability. Use performance documentation as that support and not punishment. Your record should show that the company offered support, that there was coaching, and also that opportunities for improvement were given, not just that you were building a case for discipline. Ultimately, good documentation and fair processes serve two purposes. They're going to protect your business, and they're also going to ensure that the employees are treated with dignity and transparency. Talking a little bit about performance improvement plans, or PIPs. So often misunderstood, sometimes feared, but in reality, when done well, they can be a very powerful development tool. And a PIP should never be used as a punishment. Instead, think of it as a structured opportunity to help someone course correct and succeed. They're really what an effective PIP includes is clear expectations, the realistic timeline, defined checkpoints, and support. So define what success looks like. Be specific. Instead of improved communication, say respond to internal emails within 24 hours and attend the weekly team huddles. Give employees time to make changes, typically 30, 60, I've even seen 90 days depending on the issue. Schedule some progress meetings during the plan, not just at the end. I see a lot that after an individual's put on a performance improvement plan, the manager meets with them weekly just to make sure that that communication is on point. And then offer coaching, resources, mentorship, whatever is relevant in this situation. Show that the goal is improvement and not just the documentation. When employees know that you've invested in their success, even when performance is in question, it's going to build that trust and show them that your culture values growth and that it doesn't just necessarily value compliance. And then, of course, not every performance issue will result in a turnaround. And that's when we sometimes need to talk about termination. Should always be a last resort, definitely not a knee-jerk reaction. If you've already provided feedback, coaching, documentation, PIP when appropriate, performance still doesn't improve, then moving on may be necessary for both the team and the employee. A few key reminders when navigating the process is being clear, staying compliant with employment laws, and planning out that conversation. The way we treat people when they leave matters just as much as how we welcome them, and your reputation as an employer depends on handling the moments with professionalism and humanity. Performance management doesn't live in a spreadsheet or only happen in a review form. It lives in your culture, how people work, communicate, show up every day. To create a culture of performance, it should be ongoing. It should be two-way and growth-oriented. What does this look like in action? Managers making performance conversations part of their weekly check-ins. Teams recognizing each other when someone lives out a company value. And leaders talking about goals and progress at all levels and not just behind closed doors. Performance becomes a shared responsibility. When the shift happens, it creates a workplace where people are going to feel more connected and accountable. So the big question, what's HR's role in all of this? So while managers are the frontline drivers of performance, HR is going to play that critical role as a strategic support system. There to train and coach managers, develop systems and templates, ensure objectivity and compliance. HR is not going to just be the enforcers, they're going to be the enablers of effective people leadership. So when HR is engaged early and often, then performance conversations are much more meaningful and productive. And for small business leaders, here's something I always emphasize. You don't need a corporate size budget or a 10-person HR team to manage performance well. Small businesses, consistency is more important than complexity. Relationships are often closer, which means you can be more direct, more personal, and more adaptive. And you don't need a fancy software. Any shared document, a recurring calendar invite, and intentional conversation is really going to go a long way. What matters is that you set those clear expectations, give regular and honest feedback, acknowledge contributions, and address issues early. And perhaps most importantly, keeping it human. Small businesses have that opportunity to build cultures where performance management is going to be less about checkbox and more about conversation and collaboration, which is a huge advantage. So definitely use it. And then as we're wrapping up here, being honest that even with the best of intentions, performance management can go off track. So some common mistakes that I see and what to do instead. So one of them is only addressing poor performance. If we only talk about performance when something goes wrong, employees begin to associate feedback with negativity. So instead create a balanced culture where positive reinforcement is just as common as redirection. Infrequent and vague feedback, employees shouldn't have to guess where they stand, and making reviews overly complex or punitive. We've all seen the reviews that feel more like paperwork exercises and not those meaningful conversations. Don't let this form drive the discussion. So that is where we are. So before we wrap up, I just have a few simple action items that we can walk away with. So really things to implement is no matter your role, size of the business, scheduling those regular check-ins. Even if it's 15 minutes every other week, that can make a difference. Put it on the calendar and treat it as if it's a priority. Review or write clear goals. Dust off the job description, clarify what success is going to look like and define progress, and then start giving that more frequent feedback. Looking for those small moments, whether it's a quick, great job handling that client, or let's talk about what happened in the meeting today can go a long way. Performance management, again, isn't just going to be about those systems, it's about the habits, and those habits start with leadership setting the tone. So that brings us to the end of today's session. And before we close, I just wanted to open it up and see if there's any questions. Okay, perfect. With no questions, thank you so much for your time today and for the work that you are doing each and every day to lead with intention.